To give pleasure to a single heart by a single act is better than 1,000 heads bowing in prayer. We should meet abuse by forbearance. Human nature is so constituted that if we take absolutely no notice of anger or abuse, the person indulging in it will soon weary of it and stop. My religion is based on truth and non-violence. Truth is my God. Non-violence is the means of realizing Him. If we are to teach real peace in this world, and if we are to carry on a real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children. The difference between what we do and what we are capable of doing would suffice to solve most of the world's problems. Glory lies in the attempt to reach one's goal and not in reaching it. Justice that love gives is a surrender, justice that law gives are a punishment. Gentleness, self-sacrifice and generosity are the exclusive possession of no one race or religion. Whatever you do may seem insignificant to you, but it is most important that you do it. What difference does it make to the dead, the orphans, and the homeless, whether the mad destruction is wrought under the name of totalitarianism or the holy name of liberty or democracy? No culture can live if it attempts to be exclusive. It is my own firm belief that the strength of the soul grows in proportion as you subdue the flesh. Those who say religion has nothing to do with politics do not know what religion is. What do I think of Western civilization? I think it would be a very good idea. Truth stands, even if there be no public support. It is self-sustained. There is nothing that wastes the body like worry, and one who has any faith in God should be ashamed to worry about anything whatsoever. I believe that a man is the strongest soldier for daring to die unarmed. It is unwise to be too sure of one's own wisdom. It is healthy to be reminded that the strongest might weaken, and the wisest might err. It is easy enough to be friendly to one's friends. But to befriend the one who regards himself as your enemy is the quintessence of true religion. The other is mere business. Those who know how to think need no teachers. Freedom is not worth having if it does not connote freedom to err. Palestine belongs to the Arabs in the same sense that England belongs to the English or France to the French. Everyone who wills can hear the inner voice. It is within everyone. I do not want to foresee the future. I am concerned with taking care of the present. God has given me no control over the moment following. Poverty is the worst form of violence. We may never be strong enough to be entirely non-violent in thought, word and deed. But we must keep non-violence as our goal and make strong progress towards it. Capital as such is not evil, it is its wrong use that is evil. Capital in some form or other will always be needed. I wear the national dress because it is the most natural and the most becoming for an Indian. Interdependence is and ought to be as much the ideal of man as self-sufficiency. Man is a social being. A principle is the expression of perfection, and as imperfect beings like us cannot practice perfection, we devise every moment limits of its compromise in practice. Common sense is the realized sense of proportion. I claim to be a simple individual liable to err like any other fellow mortal. I own, however, that I have humility enough to confess my errors and to retrace my steps. Non-violence requires a double faith, faith in God and also faith in man. I look only to the good qualities of men. Not being faultless myself, I won't presume to probe into the faults of others. God is, even though the whole world denies Him. Truth stands, even if there be no public support. It is self-sustained. Partition is bad. But whatever is past is past. We have only to look to the future. Nearly everything you do is of no importance, but it is important that you do it. Man can never be a woman's equal in the spirit of selfless service with which nature has endowed her. The only tyrant I accept in this world is the still voice within. My religion teaches me that whenever there is distress which one cannot remove, one must fast and pray. One's own religion is after all a matter between oneself and one's maker and no one else. Where love is, there God is also. I am a humble but very earnest seeker after truth. A policy is a temporary creed liable to be changed, but while it holds good it has got to be pursued with apostolic zeal. God, as truth, has been for me a treasure beyond price. May He be so to every one of us. Providence has its appointed hour for everything. We cannot command results, we can only strive. Purity of personal life is the one indispensable condition for building up a sound education. There is an orderliness in the universe, there is an unalterable law governing everything and every being that exists or lives. It is no blind law, for no blind law can govern the conduct of living beings. Each one prays to God according to his own light. Spiritual relationship is far more precious than physical. Physical relationship divorced from spiritual is body without soul. I believe in the fundamental truth of all great religions of the world. Prayer is a confession of one's own unworthiness and weakness. That service is the noblest which is rendered for its own sake. Non-violence, which is the quality of the heart, cannot come by an appeal to the brain. Intolerance betrays want of faith in one's cause. Morality is contraband in war. What is true of the individual will be tomorrow true of the whole nation if individuals will but refuse to lose heart and hope. Violent means will give violent freedom. That would be a menace to the world and to India herself. Only he can take great resolves who has indomitable faith in God and has fear of God. I am in the world feeling my way to light amid the encircling gloom. Religion is a matter of the heart. No physical inconvenience can warrant abandonment of one's own religion. Moral authority is never retained by any attempt to hold on to it. It comes without seeking and is retained without effort. Infinite striving to be the best is man's duty, it is its own reward. Everything else is in God's hands. God sometimes does try to the uttermost those whom he wishes to bless. Action is no less necessary than thought to the instinctive tendencies of the human frame. If cooperation is a duty, I hold that non-cooperation also under certain conditions is equally a duty. Non-violence is the article of faith. Non-violence is the first article of my faith. It is also the last article of my creed. Man is supposed to be the maker of his destiny. It is only partly true. He can make his destiny, only insofar as he is allowed by the great power. When restraint and courtesy are added to strength, the latter becomes irresistible. The spirit of democracy is not a mechanical thing to be adjusted by abolition of forms. It requires change of heart. I claim that human mind or human society is not divided into watertight compartments called social, political and religious. All act and react upon one another. Faith must be enforced by reason. When faith becomes blind it dies. Healthy discontent is the prelude to progress. I have also seen children successfully surmounting the effects of an evil inheritance. That is due to purity being an inherent attribute of the soul. I think it is the height of ignorance to believe that the sexual act is an independent function necessary like sleeping or eating. Seeing, therefore, that I did not desire more children, I began to strive after self-control. There was endless difficulty in the task. A religion that takes no account of practical affairs and does not help to solve them is no religion. Prayer is not an old woman's idle amusement. Properly understood and applied, it is the most potent instrument of action. Though we may know him by 1,000 names, he is one and the same to us all. I took the vow of celibacy in 1906. I had not shared my thoughts with my wife until then, but only consulted her at the time of making the vow. She had no objection. Culture of the mind must be subservient to the heart. I know, to banish anger altogether from one's breast is a difficult task. It cannot be achieved through pure personal effort. It can be done only by God's grace. Morality which depends upon the helplessness of a man or woman, has not much to recommend it. Morality is rooted in the purity of our hearts. Man lives freely only by his readiness to die, if need be, at the hands of his brother, never by killing him. Sense perceptions can be and often are false and deceptive, however real they may appear to us. Where there is realization outside the senses, it is infallible. It is proved not by extraneous evidence but in the transformed conduct and character of those who have felt the real presence of God within. Violent men have not been known in history to die to a man. They die up to a point. Man falls from the pursuit of the ideal of plan living and high thinking the moment he wants to multiply his daily wants. Man's happiness really lies in contentment. To deprive a man of his natural liberty and to deny to him the ordinary amenities of life is worse than starving the body, it is starvation of the soul, the dweller in the body. I claim to be a simple individual liable to err like any other fellow mortal. I own, however, that I have humility enough in me to confess my errors and to retrace my steps. I would heartily welcome the union of East and West provided it is not based on brute force. But for my faith in God, I should have been a raving maniac. I reject any religious doctrine that does not appeal to reason and is in conflict with morality. I have worshipped woman as the living embodiment of the spirit of service and sacrifice. Ours is one continued struggle against degradation sought to be inflicted upon us by the European, who desire to degrade us to the level of the raw Kaffir, whose occupation is hunting and whose sole ambition is to collect a certain number of cattle to buy a wife with, and then pass his life in indolence and nakedness. Unwearied ceaseless effort is the price that must be paid for turning faith into a rich infallible experience. We may have our private opinions, but why should they be a bar to the meeting of hearts? Increase of material comforts, it may be generally laid down, does not in any way whatsoever conduce to moral growth. For me every ruler is alien that defies public opinion. He is lost who is possessed by carnal desire. Every formula of every religion has in this age of reason, to submit to the acid test of reason and universal assent. I do all the evil I can before I learn to shun it. Is it not enough to know the evil to shun it? If not, we should be sincere enough to admit that we love evil too well to give it up. Constant development is the law of life, and a man who always tries to maintain his dogmas in order to appear consistent drives himself into a false position. A vow is a purely religious act which cannot be taken in a fit of passion. It can be taken only with a mind purified and composed and with God as witness. The pursuit of truth does not permit violence on one's opponent. Measures must always in a progressive society be held superior to men, who are after all imperfect instruments, working for their fulfillment. Just as a man would not cherish living in a body other than his own, so do nations not like to live under other nations, however noble and great the latter may be. God cannot be realized through the intellect. Intellect can lead one to a certain extent and no further. It is a matter of faith and experience derived from that faith. Fear of death makes us devoid both of valor and religion. For want of valor is want of religious faith. Rites that do not flow from duty well performed are not worth having. Are creeds such simple things like the clothes which a man can change at will and put on at will? Creeds are such for which people live for ages and ages. The law of sacrifice is uniform throughout the world. To be effective, it demands the sacrifice of the bravest and the most spotless. A weak man is just by accident. A strong but non-violent man is unjust by accident. It is any day better to stand erect with a broken and bandaged head than to crawl on one's belly, in order to be able to save one's head. All the religions of the world, while they may differ in other respects, unitedly proclaim that nothing lives in this world but truth. I will far rather see the race of man extinct than that we should become less than beasts by making the noblest of God's creation, woman, the object of our lust. Let not the 12 million Negroes be ashamed of the fact that they are the grandchildren of slaves. There is dishonor in being slave owners. There is no principle worth the name if it is not wholly good. Let everyone try and find that as a result of daily prayer he adds something new to his life, something with which nothing can be compared. I did once seriously think of embracing the Christian faith. The gentle figure of Christ, so full of forgiveness that he taught his followers not to retaliate when abused or struck, but to turn the other cheek, I thought it was a beautiful example of the perfect man. Religion is more than life. Remember that his own religion is the truest to every man, even if it stands low in the scales of philosophical comparison. Is it not enough to know the evil to shun it? If not, we should be sincere enough to admit that we love evil too well to give it up. We do not need to proselytize either by our speech or by our writing. We can only do so really with our lives. Let our lives be open books for all to study.